eventually you get absorbed in and you are Sonic.
What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor Olmstead, and I want to welcome you back to No Repeat, a podcast where we pick 3 songs every week with no repeats and no do-overs to create a perfect playlist for every occasion life throws at you. Joining me are my co-hosts, Tyler Reed.
This would be the part where I'd make a Back to the Future joke.
And Sean Evans.
Hashtag Team Candy.
Hashtag Team Simone. Simone, yay.
Hashtag everyone just have a good time.
But we're not here to talk about Drag Race. This week's challenge was Tyler's idea. Once again, back-to-back challenges from Tyler. Tyler, what was the challenge?
They don't stop. We keep picking them. I keep throwing them out. Don't worry, Sean's got a whole bunch on the docket that are just from r/shower thoughts. So don't you worry, folks. So we're getting some wild and wacky ones coming up soon. But if you think you can come up with a better idea, you can DM us on Instagram or Twitter at NoRepeatPod, or you can send us an email at norepeatpod@gmail.com. I did that in reverse order. I can just say what the challenge is now. This week, we're challenged to find the perfect song that yourself from 10 years ago would think would be really neat, would be impressed by. Be pretty cool. A little bit of time hopping.
So I want to start by taking a moment to acknowledge our past selves. So 10 years ago, in April of 2011, let's just go around the horn and talk about where we were, what we were doing in life. Personally, I was 18, and I was in the last few weeks of my senior year of high school, and I was basically killing time until graduation, and then a summer at summer camp, and then off to college. I think I looked at my last FM from that period. I was mostly listening to pop punk and a little bit of alt pop, some Matt and Kim, of course, Temper Trap, Passion Pit, that sort of thing. And then, of course, Blink-182 because high school. What about you guys? Where were you 10 years ago?
That's hilarious. See, I was thinking about it. I was like, where was I? And right about this date 10 years ago. And I was a junior in undergrad. And I was it's Sunday, so I was probably freaking out about chemistry because I waited until my junior year to take my hard science class. So I took this chemistry class, which I never had a class that had a lab component with it. So I had to not only did I have the lecture, but then I had the lab immediately after, which anybody who does a hard sciences degree, I already respect you so much because lab components are terrible. But I remember that I had towards the end of the semester, I had a dream that I was in love with one of my lab partners, who was in my group with me. And without I don't remember her name, but without divulging too much, she'd actually graduated from OU, and she was kind of looking for a teaching job at the time. And then 2 years later, I met somebody who is now my wife, who was a teaching major at OU, and our anniversary is tomorrow. How funny is that?
That is weird. Wild.
Hey.
Yeah, it's wild.
Convergence.
Huh.
Tyler, where were you 10 years ago?
That's right, because Sean and I are not that far apart. It feels like forever.
Well, you did a victory lap in college too, right?
Oh, I did 5 years, yeah. So yeah, so I was a sophomore, and I was looking at also my last FM. I used last FM up until about I believe 2013. I think was one of the last years, and then it comes back in about 2018. Basically, once we started doing this podcast. So I think this had to have been the year where I was taking lots of classes where I had to write stuff because you'll see. Well, you won't see, but I saw that before and after the following years are completely different. They have some similarities. They have some similar artists, but this year was I was listening to the Minecraft soundtrack, the Spyro soundtrack, the Super Meat Boy soundtrack, the Bastion soundtrack, Miles Davis Kinda Blue, the Cowboy Bebop soundtrack, just a lot of instrumental video game OSTs, and then also the third most listened to with 294 Scrabbles was Dome Splitter by Direct Hit. So from a few episodes ago, you'll recall we've had Direct Hit on this show before. And then at number 7 was Misfits Static Age. And that was kind of when I was into also doing like a pop punk thing. I believe since Taylor was still in high school, I think we were still hanging out at that time. So like, I think we really had a lot of like sort of shared music overlaps. I think we were doing a lot of like discovery during that time. So lots of our musical interests probably were very similar at that point.
Yeah, this was like right at the end of the iPod era, at least for me and you, because I know we were kind of slow to the iPhone. And I distinctly remember during this period when Sean was away at college, us like just hanging out in your basement, just the two of us, because all of our friends had graduated and moved away. And we were just like ripping CDs and passing them back and forth on thumb drives and like filling up our iPods with stuff. And then Sean or Katie or whoever would come home on break and we would be like, here's 1,000 new bands that you've never heard of. But going into this challenge, I was kind of thinking about like where I was both musically and in my headspace at that time. And I'm glad that we all kind of touched on that because I wanted to find something that I felt like was from this year or like the last 6 months was new, you know? And it was like a continuation of something that I was enjoying at that time, but that I like would have appreciated like emotionally and sonically because I feel like my music taste like was really formed during this period 10 years ago. Like I was in high school. That's usually when your music taste develops, but it lacked a lot of the like complexity that I feel like my taste now has. It's like I've refined my palette rather than completely changing it. And so I wanted to pick something that was maybe a little more grown up version of the like alt pop punk kind of stuff that I was really into in high school, you know, still with a little bit of that like Bleeding Hearts MO that was so popular during the emo era. But, you know, I look back on my high school self and I was very emotional. You know, I was like quasi closeted and I was an honors student and like working way too hard to try and compensate for things that I didn't need to. And just like, I don't know. I liked this kind of music because it was like this raw emotional output that I feel like I like learned how to deal with my emotions later in life. But every once in a while I still need songs like this to like bring out that like inner child, you know? And so I wanted to pick something that was like almost like a it's gonna be okay. Like I know it feels bad right now and like you're graduating and leaving your friends and everything, but you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. What about you guys? What was your thinking going into this?
I was just trying to find a song that I thought I would like 10 years ago. I was trying to think about what I was listening to, and my song is not necessarily one that is like from the past 6 months. It's new, but it's one that I discovered probably a couple years ago. That I was like, man, I really would have been into this at about that time, just given what I was listening to and what I was about to listen to. It's easier in hindsight, right? Because you can. What's the name? You can kind of like bookend it. You can say like, okay, well, between here and here, these are, at least I can think like, okay, it was like this album and this album is really what I was into.
Are you going to tell us what those were?
Yeah, so probably, oh man, crap. Circus Survive. Man, I was just listening to this album the other day, which is funny. I almost picked a song from there, but then I was like, no, because I haven't.
It probably would have been Blue Sky Noise, right?
For some reason, like right at the end of that, I really got into Viva La Vida by Coldplay. I was just really into them. And I think that's kind of more of that latter pick is probably what influenced this a little bit. But the lyrics to my song are really short, and it kind of it fits that like Circus Survive, Anthony Green kind of thing. If you could really condense it and make it almost like, imagine if Anthony Green is writing a poem, this is like a haiku. So I guess think about it like that.
And yeah, this is interesting to hear from you because you were like in your early undergrad years, because you were in Akron, you were so like two-piece bands like Black Keys and blues rock and all of that stuff. But you did kind of get into this like symphonic rock phase there for a little while. I always forget about that because it's not something you typically listen to now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I listen to it. It's always been there. It just might not have been like as prevalent. Like, because I thought last week I went with a really heavy song, and I could have picked something like that because there's always seems to be these parallels that maybe one gets ahead of the other for a little bit. If you're looking at, like, if there was a graph and it was linear, there'd always be like one, maybe nuclear goes up for another month and then it kind of drops down, and then experimental stuff goes up, or electronica or 80s revival or something. It's kind of like, I feel like to what you said, Taylor, as I've grown older, I feel like I don't say anymore that I listen to everything, because I don't.
Right.
But I feel like it's harder for me the older that I get to pin down what it is about something that I actually like. There seems to be more, like, I feel like it used to be like a checklist, but now it feels more like a word cloud.
That's a really good analogy. I like that.
That kind of reminds me that my 4-dimensional studies professor, I remember I interviewed him about, I think I might have been a junior at the time. I interviewed him and I asked him lots of very elementary primary questions, and he did a very good job of answering them in a way that was far more philosophical or engaging than anyone needed them to be, because I was what kind of I think I was trying to get him to be because he did noise rock, experimental stuff, but he also really liked hardcore punk because he kind of grew up during that era. And I was trying to be trying to get a gotcha moment almost, where I'm just kind of trying to be see, is it Lady Gaga stupid? And he's I try not to really say what's good or bad. I just try to try to learn to appreciate things and see how they could be good in certain contexts. And so that's sort of been almost my entire mantra since then. And I've been sort of realizing that over time. And so that's been really important. So I think that's something I've been ruminating on. And I think that's kind of almost, as you get older, that is kind of how you consume music, because I feel we don't necessarily drift it away from Between the Buried and Me, but you're also not well, I don't really know if I really need this as much as I did when I was 16. There's just certain phases where this music can be more applicable in more situations or whatever. Anyway, I chose my song because, boy, I just really wanted any original composition that was not from something else, not from an anime, not from a TV show, not from a game, that fulfilled the same role, that did the same thing. Because I really do also feel part of, I think what I was looking for those sounds, but I didn't know the core elements that those soundtracks were pulling from, what the original source was. And so I really was searching for that, which over time I have found. And so that's been really exciting to go through. Now I could have done a pop punk band for this challenge, but I feel Taylor was probably going to cover that. We've also done Tizo Touchdown, which I probably would have chosen, because that seems because I feel there hasn't been a lot of
spoilers for my pick.
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of development in the pop punk spectrum, right? It's kind of in a way hasn't really evolved in the too meaningfully in the last 10 years. You could say things have changed and styles have adapted, but I feel you listen to something now and you listen to it 10 years ago and you're it's not really that different. But I feel the instrumental game, especially in the beats, vaporwave, lo-fi, future funk, etc. I feel there's been a lot of development in instrumental music that's used for studying and used for for just kind of working. So that's kind of where I ended up at.
Well, Tyler, I think you might as well go first. Yeah. Since you gave us such a great overview of the state of your genre.
I picked a real sleepy song, too. We're back to Sleepy Town, boys. All right, this week I chose Shop, New Inventory by Equip. The return of Equip, vaporwave, art rock or art performance artists. Equip. I believe the last song we chosen was very early in the series where we were going on an epic adventure. And so I do still believe that Curse Breaker X, the title track off this album, is incredible and great. You should definitely listen to it. That being said, I chose Equip almost based on I chose Shop New Inventory almost purely based on the fact that it is the only song that has cracked my Last FM all-time tracks past basically the StarCraft soundtrack. It is one of the few songs that has risen to the top. So that being said, the accolade alone is enough to comment on. But kind of like I was saying, lo-fi and kind of like chill or whatever you want to call it, I feel like has really emerged within the last like maybe 5 or so years. So like I probably could have found, the origins of it. Like I feel like there's lo-fi has a lot of origins in like the rap game. So like there's definitely people I could have found, and I definitely think Nightmares on Wax and Rat-a-Tat and people were doing that around that time anyway. But there's something kind of about like the newest iteration of chill beats that is sort of like it adds more of a sort of like environmental sound. It kind of doesn't necessarily distract you because it feels like you're kind of in a space rather than you're listening to a song. And so what I think what Equip does for me is kind of like a stepping stone, because like I don't know if me from 10 years ago would be ready for like super jazzy sax, like just sort of like raindrop sound sort of stuff, but this is sort of like new waved out, echoey, feels like I'm in a mall a little bit. It's got like the guitar tone is really sort of like reminiscent of like video games, and sort of would be a good stepping stone for me to kind of get from where I was here and then into more like study stuff, because it really does help me like when I'm working, because I definitely need stuff to like listen to, and this album is just killer. It's just exciting enough that I think that it keeps you engaged in like entertainment value, but I don't think it doesn't pull your attention in such a way that's distracting. And so I just think that this song is just smooth. It's pleasant. Sure, the song is about like being in like a shop, and I think it sufficiently evokes being in a shop, and I don't know, it's just a cute little track.
I was not at all surprised to see that you did this, because you were so close to picking it before when we did that adventure challenge, and you just like waxed poetic about this so much.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I totally get it. And knowing you 10 years ago, I feel like this would be like on repeat. This would be the only CD in your car stereo to harken back to that time. Like, it's the kind of stuff that you were just so excited by because it was like video game adjacent, but there was clearly like live instruments to it, in the same way that like Anamanaguchi was just popping off around this time, who we just talked about a couple episodes ago.
Yep.
As far as like the track itself now, I think it's, like I said on the previous episode where we talked about Equip, I think it's really interestingly layered. I love that every time I listen to it, I hear a new sound or a new instrument that I didn't realize was there. I went on a big Prince kick this week, and these drums give me big Prince vibes, which I really enjoy. It's that kind of like 80s new funk type of thing, which I'm very here for. Also, we'll just go ahead and sound the siren. We got a secret sax up in here.
Oh no!
A song that is all guitars and synths.
Could you tell me what sound what instrument that synth is supposed to mimic? Is it supposed to be a sax or a trumpet?
Yep, that's a secret sax if I ever heard one, baby. It's a synth mimicking a sax, around the 145 mark.
So if you got secret sax on your bingo board open, make sure you check that off this season, because
Dang it. I try every week not to do a secret sax, and it just keeps coming. It keeps coming back, and I don't...
It's okay. It's not our only secret sax this week. Don't you worry.
Oh,
But yeah, I think this is a really fun track today. I definitely am going to listen to this week as I'm writing, because I kind of forgot this album existed. And I think 2011 Tyler would have been absolutely obsessed with this, so well done.
10 years ago, me would not have liked this song. And I just want to put it out there first. And 10 years now, me still does not like this song that much.
2 for 2, baby. That's the way we gotta be.
I'm gonna be one of those people that ever is like, oh yeah, vaporwave. That's for me, because it's not. And this doesn't have anything to even do with like the synth sax or anything like that. I just really like when I listen to this. I was taking some notes on it, and one of my notes is there's nothing on this song that I like.
Oh, harsh. Harsh.
Upon more listening, I haven't changed my mind about that. The only thing that I can...
There's now let me just say there's a certain satisfaction I get from Sean. Like, I get embarrassed when I feel like when Sean is like disappointed in my pick, or like he like mostly likes it but he has like one flaw in it. But I'm almost delighted when he's just like, I hate this.
I mean, this is the other thing. Okay, so you guys know that my brother is a choreographer, one of his many gigs, and I get that there is a need out there for like little or known music, or like experimental stuff that's not popular, and that's just never who I was. I was never really like searching out that thing, and it also, and the other reason for that is too because I'm not somebody who just puts music on to have music on. I don't know why I can't do it. I cannot just have music on if I'm writing or doing something. I honestly, if I put it on, I'm completely intend on listening to it. That's where the pandemic has kind of gotten bad for me a little bit, is that I used to listen to a lot of music in my car, and now that I really don't drive that much, right, it's like now it's like a treat for me to go in my car and listen to surrounded music, not on headphones, but like actually be in a zone where there is like speakers that are playing music at you. Yeah, there just wasn't much for me here. And I'm not even like, oh, the secret sax, oh, you got me this time, you figured it out, ha ha ha. It's like, I don't know.
I think that's totally fine. We're right, because I think what's part of the allure for me, and I think sort of like intentionally, is that there isn't necessarily like a through line. Like, there's not like a song structure. There's no narrative to it. And so like you're kind of like looking for meaning when there is none. And you're like, why am I listening to this? And then, to be fair, I do feel like as like a genre, you know, like I don't feel like it's ever going to be something that you're going to be into. Now, I was thinking about picking a song that like a more like a future funk song that was like, you know, a little more dancey, and you're like, oh, I can find intentionality and a reason to dance, you know, and there's like usually lyrics added to it on. You're like, oh, okay, I could latch onto these lyrics in some way, but this is just literally like guitar sound. Beep, 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 boop. You're like, what is any of this? What does this mean? It's fine.
You know those challenges that we do when we did Wigglecore? We should do a wave challenge. We pick our
Something
favorite wave songs. Yeah, something wave.
I like that. That's good. Add it to the list.
Hey, this is John from the Song Surfing Podcast. Song Surfing is a playlist of independent music pulled from the far reaches of the internet. I've been searching for music on Bandcamp, SoundCloud, Spotify, Slaps, Audius, Instagram, and a few others, and in each episode of Song Surfing, I present some excellent tunes by a diverse group of interesting independent artists. So if you like to discover new artists and explore some music from around the world, then come song surfing with me. Song Surfing is available on all podcast apps, as well as Spotify and Amazon.
All right, Sean, well, why don't you go next?
All right, so this week I chose Jupiter by Baldson. So I think the first time I heard this song, it was on like a Discover playlist on Spotify. I don't know what I was listening to at the time that would have popped this one up there. It might have been like on another list, like a radio or something, playlist that I had Spotify's algorithm create. But as soon as I heard it, that piano line, I was just like, I love this song. I probably hit like immediately. And the more that I listened to it, the more I was like, this is so good. The reason I think 10 years ago me would have liked it is because, first off, piano and drums having a prominent line is my kind of my childhood thing because my brother played piano and I played drums. We didn't play together, but I like those two things together. The other thing that I really like about this song and what I would have liked about the time is that it's not that distorted, which is something I was seeking out in music a lot. Just having the clean bass, having the piano, having the drums be pretty clean and up forward is really nice. The other thing that I liked about it is that the lyrics are very simple. There's not a lot going on, and I feel like right about this time was when I really started what is still today my writer's block has really kicked in. And I think it's because I got really self-conscious about what lyrics should be like. And I have to remind myself all the time. I have to pick up with good examples of finding music that I like that doesn't have to be like amazing lyrically, or that you can write fantastic music that doesn't have to be epic poetry or something along those lines. It can be something that's simple and easy to digest, but still has nuance to it and can add, like the listener can add their own complexity to it. So that's why I picked this one. There is a saxophone in it.
Baritone saxophone, too. This is awesome. Yeah, I am blown away by this track. I love that it starts so simple with just that piano and drums and vocal, and it just builds into this giant full band, like, driving mess. I feel like I could dance the night away to this track. I am so into this. I am immediately downloading this whole record. I love this. 10 years ago, me, I think, would also have been into this because he was just getting into Ben Folds and really piano-driven music, so well done on that front. Wanted to do a quick call-out that, however you say this person's name is, Blodsen, maybe, is Dutch, and his stage name comes from a relatively unknown Danish cyclist from the 70s, so just perfectly on brand for Sean, because this was also right around the time that Sean got super into cycling.
I would have assumed Sean knew that.
I adore this song. I think it has the perfect dose of modern production into what otherwise feels like kind of an old school, almost like not dance hall reggae, but like dance hall song, like a 40s and early 50s, like sock hop type of beat almost. Like it's so deceptively simple, but as you add more instruments, like it becomes surprisingly complex towards the end. And I love that baritone sax solo. So good. Can't believe Sean picked a song with a sax solo. And then the last thing I'll say is I'm really intrigued by his vocal delivery. It's probably the fact that he's Dutch and singing in English. It's kind of this, it's like the Beatles effect where like people, when they sing pop music, tend to sing it in what they think an American accent sounds like. And inevitably that means that you, like, if you don't normally speak American English, you emphasize syllables in different ways than we would. And so the way he says Jupiter with like a long, soft I feels like this weird, like, Dutch inflected English that I'm just really fascinated by. And I really hope that he does that on all of his music because I'm very excited to listen to more of it.
It's interesting that you picked up on that because, like, I feel like there's such a historic, I feel like dudes are just gonna say words weird regardless. I mean, like, Isaac Brock is just gonna say whatever he wants in any way that he wants to say it.
Well, Isaac Brock has a lisp that he's very self-conscious about, so...
Well, okay, well, that's not fair, but, I mean...
Yeah, you picked the worst example, but I get what you're saying, yes. Anthony Kiedis does not need to say words the way that he does. He chooses to.
It was all yellow. It was, well, he's British, whatever. Anyway, I didn't really note on that, but I do think that's very astute of you to pick up on that. I do feel like it's a interesting pick that Sean would love a song. Well, I mean, he had already said that he feels like piano and drums kind of goes back to like his childhood, but I still do think that it's kind of an interesting choice that Sean would pick this for his younger self, because it does feel a little out of what I would consider to be the wheelhouse, considering this is him like just freshly exiting like an Avenged Sevenfold phase, you know? So like I feel like we kind of really were like, all right, we're kind of this time has passed. We're kind of over this. And I feel like, I don't know. I do feel like, that being said, I do feel like the stuff you kind of were into in college does sort of feel kind of relevant to this song. Like I don't think this sounds like Jane's Addiction, but I feel like it would go on a playlist that Jane's Addiction is also on, and I feel like it might work. I don't know. This doesn't feel...
See, I get Arcade Fire vibes, if anything.
Sure.
Which
that would
Sean
also
was
go
also
great on there.
just getting into around this time.
I don't feel like this is like the biggest stretch for me, but that doesn't mean that it's not a sick song. I feel like... I don't know. I feel like...
I deserve this, don't I?
No, I don't think you do. I just feel
it's
like
because I get on here and trash this song, and now he's gonna try and trash it in the nicest way that he can, because he just can't.
I'm just trying to think about. I just feel like I don't want to say your style hasn't changed. It obviously has, but I feel like you've really curated a very consistent sound that I feel like there's a lot. It has a really like if there's like a central core, and I feel like there's lots of like things on the sides, and I feel like it can really kind of like go into, because like you kind of have added on like a layer of like country recently that I feel like it's new, but I feel like it still fits into the core ideas of what you're into. It's just it's fascinating. I
You have the same thing. You're like, jazz aficionado class really got you.
Yeah. I've just been on a hunt the whole time for the last 5 to 6 years, trying to find the perfect sax. But I do feel like it is bold of you to include a song that has saxophone in it in your current incarnation of sax hate, which I'm assuming is only more fervorous back in the day. So I can't imagine.
No, sax hate is probably a recent development. And I'm glad. I mean, just for the record, I totally didn't even think that there was sax on here. I noticed it sometimes, but I didn't honestly I didn't put it on here because I was like, the fact that the saxophone gets so much play on this podcast is beyond. It has taken on a life of its own now. The secret sax thing. We'll probably have to work it into our next Patreon gift.
I think we should sell Secret Sax t-shirts.
Great. Or even just a sticker, something low commitment.
It needs to happen. Well, it's okay, Sean. You don't have to worry about any secret sax on my track this week.
Oh, I know.
This week I chose How Will I Rest in Peace If I'm Buried by a Highway by Kenny Hoopla.
You say I know that it's fine. I say I know that it's fine. You say it's only a fire. I think it's more than a fire. She's gonna cut my head off, but I don't care. I don't care. She's gonna cut my head off, but I don't care. See, clean up mine, just like a diamond.
So Kenny Hoopla is a new up-and-coming singer-songwriter rapper from Cleveland. He is 23 and has released an EP and a few singles, and he's like a critical darling at the moment. His most recent single features Travis Barker. I almost picked that because I was like, oh, high school me would have been obsessed with a Travis Barker feature. But no, I had to pick his biggest track for sure, How Will I Rest in Peace If I'm Buried by a Highway, because I feel like it is the kind of song that like high school me would have loved emotionally, because it's very raw, the delivery, it feels like he's like screaming his head off, and it's about like this kind of like existential dread that I'm sure my emo high school self would have been very into. But what really excites me today about this song and what I like wish I could like show my 18-year-old self is like, see how this song on first listen sounds like pop punk. But then when you know enough to know better, it's kind of a New Order song, but it's also kind of like The Weeknd and like modern R&B in the verses. Like Kenny Hoopla has a wildly diverse set of influences, and he's bringing them all together on these first few singles in a way that makes me so pumped for his debut record. Like, I feel like high school me would have loved to be in a mosh pit for this track, and 28-year-old me, if I still went into the pit, would be right there for this. But I definitely want to see him. I mean, he blows me away. I'm so excited to see where he goes. And this song is just like such a confluence of everything I've been listening to really my entire life. And I feel like it's very validating to like hear this and be like, okay, 18-year-old me, like these sounds that you like have potential. Like it's not going to die with the Blink-182 reunion. Like this is going to keep going and be a genre to pay attention to.
See, I was totally ready to, you reversed my feelings on this song.
Good, I'm glad.
And the reason is because when you said about the new wave stuff and all that stuff, that's one thing. But now I'm watching Estella, which is the one that features Travis Barker. This is not, so what I put down here is it's basically this. I thought he was English.
No, he's a black guy from Cleveland.
He was listening.
Well, yeah, but if you didn't have the music video in front of you, you wouldn't know, you know? Because he sounds like he's, you know, a white guy from Britain in the 80s. Like, he sounds like a New Order member.
So, like, listening to Estella, I love that song a little bit more than the one that you picked.
I do too, but I think this one is more, like, sonically interesting.
Yeah.
Estella feels like a more traditional pop punk song, and it has that Travis Barker production where like the drums are just a little too loud all the time, which I get, but it's Travis Barker. Like you gotta do it, but
wink.
Whatever.
But oh man, see, I like this song because it makes me feel okay. Now I'm listening to another song, and actually, it's the live version of "How I Rest in Peace, I'm Buried Next to the Highway." I think we had a talk about this on one of the Billy Joe Armstrongs a long time ago, where we were talking about how there seems to be this like going understanding out there amongst guitar players, basically just rock and roll people in general, that rock and roll is dead, that it really has left its own time. But then when we see people like Tizo Touchdown and Kenny Hoopla, it makes me think like the future looks good for rock and roll.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that hip hop is going anywhere. But what I'm saying is I think that there's a rock and roll that looks more like Tyler the Creator meets like post-hardcore that's going to be really, really cool coming out. And when I hear stuff like this, I'm like, this is going to be awesome. So yeah, 10 years ago, would have loved this. I'm going to go ahead and say that. In my notes, I said, would not have liked it. I'm changed my mind. Would have loved it.
Whoa. A swift turnaround. Incredible. But yeah, I mean, I agree basically the sentiment that great that black people are picking up the guitar, making like a pop punk band. Incredible. Making pop punk music, fusing it in their own unique and special way that's like kind of all their own and sort of like reinventing the genre. I think that's incredible. I think that it's kind of the injection of life that I think we kind of needed, because I feel like really after this the last couple years, you're just kind of like, really, what do suburban white kids have to complain about that are really all that bad, right? You know, and so like I just feel like this is a much more like engaging and interesting sort of like voice to use pop punk as a through line for. I think it's very fun. And I think like sending this back 10 years, I think would, you know, in this time warp, you know, I feel like that it would also influence me, and it would get me to, I feel like I would find, it would probably help me kind of bridge the gap in a different way, where I maybe would be approach like different kinds of rap music or different sort of like alternative rap or different kind of stuff that people are kind of experimenting with, because I feel like kind of like as like a kid, we kind of grew up in an era where there was like a lot of like Just people. I feel like topically they were not very approachable to like a kid from the suburbs, like a white kid from the suburbs. So it's like I couldn't really relate to this, but like
well, and there was definitely a lot more like partially racially motivated like genre separation.
Yeah, right.
Of people
Also
saying
that.
things like I listen to everything but not rap.
Right.
That I don't think you can get away with now, mostly because rap
Right.
is like the dominant thing in the popular music zeitgeist.
Exactly. And I feel like and I feel like all that we really needed was a perspective as well. And so like I feel like being able to listen to the song, I feel like that would give us so much better perspective. And so I feel like I think this is not only great because it would be a song that you would already like, but I feel like it would also sort of like give us, you know, an outlook that we didn't really see when we were growing up. So I think it's great. Also, I think the song just is cool. I think it's interesting. I think it's very progressive and doing something new that I think is fun.
All right, now it's time for notable B-sides. Anybody got some?
Boy, I have a bunch this week. Really strong contender that I feel like would have just blown my little like alt pop mind is Heat Waves by Glass Animals. If you guys haven't heard that track yet, oh my gosh, that bass just hits so damn hard. It's so good. Kilby Girl by the Backseat Lovers sounds like what I wish Arctic Monkeys still sounded like. No Lover by Jetty Bones is like the natural progression of Paramore if they stayed pop punk. And Undone by Lande Hecht is doing really interesting things in the singer-songwriter space that kind of takes rock and roll and experimental electronics and puts them together in a cool way that I don't think I was quite ready for at that point. It probably would have been better for me like 5 years ago, like late college.
I mean, honestly, a lot of the songs that I could pick for this challenge are things that I've already chosen because I feel like a lot of it is sort of like I could have chosen like a crying song because I feel like that would have been like chip bit infused with pop punk and it would have been great to go back. You know, I could have chosen like I don't think Carly Rae Jepsen really had hit the scene yet, but I could have like tossed something back there. Emotion probably would have been.
I disagree. I don't think you were ready for girl pop at that point.
I don't think I was either, but I feel like maybe Motion Sickness by Phoebe Bridgers might have been like close enough, or I feel like that song is just good enough as a single that I'm like, I would probably like that. I also thought about St. Vincent, but I was like, I can't do a third St. Vincent song. There's a new album coming out.
Especially when the new album's coming out in 2 weeks, like
yeah. You know, Daddy's Home. Caro Benito probably would have been a good pick, but I picked them not that long ago. Yeah, I think there was a lot of stuff that I probably could have chosen that I feel like just a little too fresh for the playlist, I think.
Oh man, see, the other thing I was gonna pick for this, which is why I want to dig a little deeper, was probably something off of Tame Impala. Off of their third album. I forget what it is. Currents. It would have been something off Currents.
What year did that come out? Oh, 2015.
You're going to hate that. You're going to hate this album at first, but eventually you will really love this album. It will totally grow on you. Just like, what's the Killer's first album?
Oh, Hot Fuss. Did you see that Kevin Parker is doing a live stream performance of all of Inner Speaker? Definitely going to be putting that on the watch list.
That'd be a cool thing to talk about on Village Armstrong, if Tyler was into it. I don't know.
Sure. I like Tame Impala. I feel like there was a lot of I had a lot of presumptions about Tame Impala before I forced myself to dig into Kevin Parker's work in order to pick for one of your challenges or one of our friendly fires. I was like, I'm just gonna listen to as much Tame Impala as I can. So I've broken down that barrier. I would definitely be into that.
Well, Tyler, if people want to show you some more chiptunes, where can they do that?
Hey everybody, you can find my design and illustration work at rootpets.club. As always, find me on socials as rootpetsclub on Instagram and Twitter.
Sean, if people want to argue with you about the virtues of the saxophone, where can they do that?
Don't find me on Instagram, but If you want to, you can find me on Instagram at TellySean.
And if you want to talk to me about the future of pop punk, you can find me on Twitter at TC Olmstead. All of these songs will be on the official No Repeat podcast playlist, and we'll be back next week with another episode of No Repeat.